Well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for Savannah Jewish Family Services Food for Thought program. Please note, if you have any questions or comments during the program, please write them in the chat. We'll have a short Q&A at the end. Before we begin, I have a special announcement. We're going back in person. Starting August 5th at 12:30 p.m., we'll be having Food for Thought back at the JEA with interesting speakers and a delicious lunch. I hope to see many of you there. For today's program, I'm honored to introduce Nina Walden. Nina has been working in Jewish education for more than 3 decades, creating students' material programs in print, online, and video. She has designed and implemented educational programs for students of all ages. Her work has been published by the major Jewish publishers. Thank you so much for joining us today, Nina.
Thanks, Sunny. I'm happy to be here. The first thing I want to say, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Chai Mitzvah and a little bit about our new program, Grandparents Beyond. So if you are a grandparent and you are on camera, show of hands. Great. Okay. So a recent Pew study found that 41% of young Jewish adults describe themselves as Jews of no religion. They describe their religion as atheist, agnostic, or nothing in particular, even though many have a Jewish parent or were raised Jewish, like these are our kids. And what does it mean to us? I'm going to share my screen with you and tell you a little bit about Grandparents and Beyond so that we can find out more. Okay. So the materials in Grandparents and Beyond are designed not just for grandparents, but for any older adults and younger friends. For example, grandnieces and nephews or family friends. Activities designed to work both in person and virtually. Some of us were saying we're going to be seeing our grandchildren soon. Some of us live far away from them and still meet on Zoom. So for this reason, it can work both ways. I'm going to give you a little personal background. So I raised my kids in New Jersey in the suburbs, but when the last kid left the house, we moved to a sailboat. I'm on a sailboat right now. And the way most people jog in the morning, I paddleboard every morning. And I was paddleboarding yesterday and I was looking at the sky and it was really hazy and foggy. And it was a little bit, I felt like I was on another planet. It was kind of scary. And that was from the fires all the way on the other coast in California. And I was very affected by it. It underscored the climate, both physical and political. There were a lot of opinions floating around us today, a lot of arguments. There are fires and floods. The air quality is unhealthy. And that made me think of the things we can do as older generation to make things more clear and give the younger generation some perspective. So I'm showing this program to you because I believe our ancient tradition has something to say. And by sharing it with the younger generation, we can give them some clarity. We've had this tradition for thousands of years and it's helped us survive. And that's why I'm here to share Chai Mitzvah's Grandparents and Beyond program with you, so that you can share the wisdom and joy of the traditions for the next generation. Grandparents and Beyond is filled with all kinds of fun activities and interesting, meaningful conversations. You can do it with kids from ages 5 to 18. Today, we're going to look at the first of the 12 topic source books, and we're going to go through it as if you're going to be doing it with your friends or family. And if you like to do it after we go through it and you enjoy it, then you can have it sent to you. I'll tell you how. It doesn't cost anything. There's no charge, and it's really fun. So the first source book is about rites of passage. This is a great place to start because there's so much here that connects you to the next generation and to our traditions. So let's talk about tips for connecting virtually and what the fun things you can do are. Let's look at the first page. First of all, before you do anything, make sure everyone's on board, including not just the youngsters, but their parents or guardians. And then look through the book. Read the text and do the activities that you like. You can see on the screen there's some icons. Those are the recommended ages for texts, conversations, and activities. But your youngster might be ready for things that are an older age group, or they might enjoy a game that's recommended for younger kids. So you and your youngster are the best judges of which activities to do. And the conversations can go wherever you like. There are no right or wrong answers. Of course, the first thing you'll need to know is what counts as a rite of passage. I think it's important to pass down our family stories about transformational events. And to give an example of what a rite of passage is, before I tell you about the common ones, I'm going to tell you a story my mother tells from when she was 9 years old. And I've told it to my children, and when my grandchildren are old enough, I know my daughters will tell it to them. My mom was born in New York. Just before World War II started, she was about 9 years old. And she and my grandmother went to Hungary to try to get out their relatives because they knew what was coming up. And my mother, a little girl from New York, was very, very affected by what she saw there. She was so scared. It took like a year to get over it. And that was a transformational event for her. My favorite part of the story, though, is they had to take a train through Germany to get to Hungary. And it just happened to be that they saw Hitler marching with his army in the square. And my mother, being a 9-year-old from New York, thumbed her nose and gave him a Bronx cheer. She went at Hitler, which is great if you're in New York, was not looked upon so kindly by the police on the train. They grabbed my grandmother and they strip searched her. And because they had American passports, they let them go on their way. But for the entire rest of the trip, my mother was commanded, if you see a policeman, you are asleep. And she had to pretend she was asleep for a great deal of the trip. And that was a transformational moment for my mother. She never forgot it. And whenever she talks about getting over a trauma, she goes back to that point in her life. So it's interesting to think about what your rites of passage might be and what you would share with your family and friends and children. More common examples of rites of passage might include starting school, going to sleepaway camp, bar bat mitzvah, getting a driver's license, first paid job, getting married. And let's think of something we might have experienced recently, like retirement, becoming a grandparent, maybe moving to a new home. Think about what you'd want to share with your youngsters. And when you do share, they're more likely to share moments they have with you. You probably see on this page an orange square at the bottom. You'll see in each booklet that there are links to videos and additional information. And this is a beautiful song that I'm going to play for you. It's a link to a song by Matt Barr, who's known as the Bible rapper. It's nice because you'll see there are kids in it. It's a lullaby he wrote for his newborn baby son. And it's talking about seeing the world through the eyes of his baby, about the values he hopes his kids are going to have. I'm going to put it on for you so that you can see it.
A dream for you, a dream for two of us. Dream, a dream for me, a dream for you, a dream for two of us. Dream, a dream for me, a dream for you, a dream for two of us. Dream, a dream for me, a dream for you, a dream for two of us. I'm not gonna say what you should be or do. A man can learn a lot about that from you. It's true. The wonder in your eyes sees through every disguise that a man needs to build up to fill up the space that grew between himself and everyone else. I'm trying to see everything like it's brand new, and I see truth when I see you doing exactly what I'm trying to do. Dream for two of us. A dream for me, a dream for you, a dream for two of us. I took the time, I took the time, I took the time. I took the time, I took the time, I took the time for two of us. Dream, a dream for me, a dream for you, a dream for two of us. When you ask why, I'll reply that because it's love. Above, within, from her, from him. Blindness is no match for kindness. Many times you remind us it's crazy. The meanest man that's ever been was a once a baby. So baby, as I lay you down to sleep, remember in your dreams to keep one foot in your prayers, one foot in reality. Dream, dream, dream for two of us. Dream, dream, dream for the say goodnight. I took the time to write you a rhyme for to say goodnight. For to say goodnight. Good night. A dream for me, a dream for you, a dream for two of us. Dream a dream for me, a dream for you, a dream for two of us. Dream a dream for me, a dream for you, a dream for two of us. Dream a dream for me, a dream for you, a dream for two of us. Dream a dream for me, a dream for you, a dream for two of us. Dream a dream for me, a dream for you, a dream for two of us. Dream a dream for me, a dream for you, a dream for two of us. Dream a dream for me, a dream for you, a dream for two of us. Dream a dream for me.
So I think that's really beautiful. And I want you to remember that because later on, I'm going to come back to the way kids see the world and what it can mean for us. Let's go back to our, here. Okay.
Dream.
So we also begin, before we get to our actual text, we begin each topic with an activity. And you might find if you have young grandchildren or young children you're doing it with, that the activities work great and the text you might just skip. And if you have older kids, you might find they love the texts and don't really want to do some of the activities, but it's up to you what you want to do. And there's tons to choose from. So a nice activity to begin to focus on rites of passage and learn more about what's important to each of you is to list the rites of passage that you've experienced, both Jewish and secular, at different ages. There's some examples here on the screen. For example, being born, of course, first part-time job, starting school, starting driving, what you've done at different ages. And as you're listing them, talk about them with your youngster and let them talk with you about what they're thinking. And what did it feel like to go through them? Why these events were important to you? And I was thinking about this, and I was thinking that some of them feel more important to me now than they did when I went through them because of the effect they've had on me for the rest of my life. So that's something to think about too. And as you're thinking about what you would share with your children or grandchildren or friends, I'm going to give you an example of one of my own. And thinking back on it, I don't know why I still remember it, but I was in second grade and I lived in Manhattan and I took the bus to school. And in second grade, I was old enough to go on the public bus by myself with my bus pass. And I remember I got off the bus after school and I had to walk past a convenience store to get home. And I went inside and there was a book. They had like a bunch of little easy reader books there for sale. And I bought one for myself with my own quarter. And I carried it home and I could read it. And I saved that book. It's about a boy named Billy who bakes a cake. It's a silly cake with all kinds of stuff in it. And recently, I mean, just like maybe a few months ago, I found it and gave it to my 5-year-old grandson who loves to bake and is just starting to get ready to read. So it's just, I don't know, it was transformational in some way, and it's an experience that I remember. And you might have some experiences like that as well. So that's the kind of thing you can share when you're talking to your youngster. And now we're ready to read and understand and discuss the text. I'm not going to read the whole thing today because of time constraints, but the message is that in each stage of development, a person stops being what he or she was, travels along a path of change, and then adjusts to living a new pattern of living. And this can be stressful, even when the pattern is something you've been waiting for, something you're looking forward to. Rites of passage help us adjust to the change. So before we get to our conversation that we would have, there are some more starter activities to help make it clear to all ages. This is very fun coming up. There's an app you can download called Chatterpix Kids. It's free and there's a link to it in the booklet you can see. It's very easy to use. You just take a photo of an object on your iPhone, click on the app and follow the directions. That 5-year-old I was telling you about can do it by himself all the time. It's easy. And if you feel like it or you need it, there is a demonstration on our Chai Mitzvah website. Every time we release a source book, we also put up a tutorial that explains any of the things that you might want to know. We have tutorials posted for each of the 12 source books. And here's an example of something we did with it. It's a talking challah cover. I The challah cover that your great-great-grandma embroidered when she was just 10 years old. She brought it with her from Hungary when she came to America at the age of 16. Her first job when she came here was embroidering dresses at a factory. Every generation of our family has used this challah cover. See, that's really fun. You can even add to it, like you can put glasses on it and earrings and like all kinds of things, which I can assure you my grandson loves to do. And so it's a really fun way to share something that is meaningful in your family and that even reflects our tradition. And then if you have older kids or you want to do something a little more serious, you can do a timeline, a personal timeline using the list you just made, incorporating both Jewish and secular events. You can include photos and drawings and even videos. You can use a template you see here. But for a good online template, there's something called Smart Draw, which you could also try. There's a link to that. If you want to do it in person or linearly, each of you at your own screen, you can print out this page multiple times until you have enough branches for your personal timeline and fill in each branch with a rite of passage. Write the year each one took place in the box below the branch. And if you like, include a photo or a drawing for each rite of passage. You might want to print out the pages in advance so you and your youngster can do it together physically, or if you're in FaceTime or Zoom, you can work on them independently and hold them up to the screen to show them to each other. You might also do them independently when you're not together and then share them when you are together. It's a nice way to keep the connections going between your grandparents and beyond calls. And you'll also see here there's a link to Smart Draw. Smart Draw has a free trial period. It's not free forever. I would suggest that you would try it and see if you like it. It's pretty intuitive to use. If you and your youngster are meeting virtually, it's a nice way because you can be on the screen together at the same time. And chances are your youngster is going to be able to use it and show you how. But you don't have to. That's why there's also a printable timeline included. And also, just like the instructions for Chatterpix Kids, the same tutorial has instructions for how to do Smart Draw. It's pretty easy. And then another activity that's really nice for sharing rites of passage or sharing things that are important to you during this specific time of your life is using a smartphone and sharing music, a video clip, or other pop culture that you enjoy. You can show them something you enjoyed when you were their age. And if you're meeting by Zoom on a computer or a tablet, you can go to YouTube and share the screen. So think about what you would share and what you think your youngsters would share. And while you're doing that, I'm going to show you an example. Chai Mitzvah has, hold on. Chai Mitzvah has some community events that we share. And there was one of them, there were a few families on it together. And one of the kids, a 15-year-old boy, shared what he loves, which is video game music. I'm going to show you how this worked. All right, awesome. Okay. Let's hear. And take a look at the other people's reactions while he does it. Look at his cousins and their glasses underneath.
Yeah, that's very, it sounds like almost like a movie, like it would be like an epic to a movie.
Yeah, that's actually doing like the fighting portion of the game where like you're fighting people. That's like, that's the background, just like, yeah.
Yeah. Is it all like that? Is it synthesized music or is it?
Well, there's a lot of different types of games. It's like the beginning of it is, no, there's the parts of song. Like it can be all different types of things. Like there's parts of songs, like Minecraft music is just literally just a couple notes, like just ba, 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 ba. So a lot of game music could be multiple different genres. Like you could have rock game music. Like there's a type of game music that's literally Christian rock, which is still pretty good. And then there's like orchestral game music, which is most of it. Most game music is mostly orchestral. This is actually a metal version of an orchestral song.
So that's pretty cool because it's getting a kid to share something that we wouldn't even know how to ask the question about this. But, you know, because he was in this, doing this Grandparents and Beyond, it came up, which was really nice. And so it's a really good way to share things that you might not think about sharing otherwise. The next thing that we're looking at is another activity, and it's about expectations through the different stages of life. This is a fun, easy activity. You've got a bubble there, and you can write in it what you expect about your future. Imagine your future and tell about it. What you expect and hope is close to your heart. So this is a great opportunity to get to know each other on a deeper level. What was expected of you at each age? What's expected of your youngsters? After your conversation, you might want to look at the Jewish text that inspired it. Youngsters younger than grade 3 might find this difficult, but as a grandparent or a grandfriend, that's up to you. For older kids, it's a great opportunity to explore something that's probably new to them, and it's nice to explore it with you. There are 2 introductions to the text that you can see here, geared for different age levels. There's one part of the introduction that I think is really important, so I'm going to read it to you and you'll see why. The Avot treatise of the Mishnah is often called Ethics of the Fathers in English. It contains ethical teachings of the rabbis. The rabbis of the Mishnah were living in a time when all they knew had turned to chaos as a result of the destruction of the temple. The writing of the Mishnah was an attempt to restore order to the chaos. Rabbi Jacob Neusner teaches that the lists found in chapter 5 of Avot reveal the order beneath the chaos. He goes on to teach that this Mishnah highlights that order can endure, patterns can be found, and isolated facts can be drawn together to bear meaning. Similarly, life cycle events celebrated by Jews through specific rituals can be described as an attempt to bring order to chaotic times in our lives. As we move through the life cycle, these moments are not necessarily chaotic in times of crisis, but chaotic in terms of changing identities. These transformational moments force us to acknowledge that we are in some way forever changed and transformed. As you can see, there's a link to additional information about the Mishnah if you and your youngster are curious and would like more information. And even if you have lots of knowledge, sometimes it's hard to think of the right words to answer specific questions, so that link is really helpful. Now let's look at the text. As you listen to it, compare it to when you were young and when your children were young and what youngsters expect and what's expected of them today. I'm looking to see, which screen are you seeing?
The booklet one, Ritual of Passage.
Good. I'm glad. I wasn't sure because I don't see the green thing around it. Okay, good. So let's read the text and see how it's different or similar to today. For example, people are getting married later and having children later than they used to. And I'm going to tell you a quick story about my mother because it relates to this. My mother was one of 6 women who got into Cornell Law School in 1949. She had 2 things going against her. She was Jewish and she was a woman. So she was waitlisted at Cornell Law School. But she never found out that she was admitted until much later because when the letter of admission came, my grandmother didn't tell her. Why didn't my grandmother tell her? She wanted her to get married. So by the time she got married and had my sister, then she found out that she could have gone to Cornell Law School. And that's just something that I don't think would happen today, but that was the expectation in those days. I'm sure my grandmother thought that was perfectly fine because that was what you hoped for your children. So let's look at this text and see what it says to us. Yehuda ben Tema used to say, at 5 years of age, the study of scripture. At 10, the study of Mishnah. At 13, subject to the commandments. At 15, the study of Talmud. At 18, marriage. At 20, pursuit of a livelihood. At 30, peak of mature strength. At 40, wisdom, mature intellectual powers. At 50, able to give counsel, mature judgment of situations. At 60, old age creeping on. At 70, fullness of years. At 80, the age of strength. At 90, body bent. At 100, as good as dead and gone, completely out of the world. So some of these surprise me and make me laugh. And it's interesting to see how your youngsters react. And some great conversations that will help you share your thoughts about this. For even the youngest kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? What will you need to become this? What character traits or abilities do you hope to gain as you grow up? And for us wise adults, we can discuss this with each other or with our kids. Do some of the stages listed in this text surprise you? Are they different from your view of the stages of life? The older I get, the more I wonder. It's interesting. And the next fun activity that also relates to this connects the entire family or group. But I want to stop sharing for a second and come back because there's something weird about this. Hold on. Okay. Okay, I think that looks better, right? There. Yeah. Okay. So, oops. Here. The activity is to create a new ritual that you can share together. Because when one member of a family transitions to a new stage of life, it affects all the members of the family. And planning and preparation leading up to these moments push us to acknowledge and find meaning in the transition together as we move from one stage of life to the next. So think about something you've gone through recently, or maybe someone in your family or close to you has gone through. Think about what it was. What kind of ceremony might you envision to mark this transition? Suggested examples for grandchildren, maybe potty training, first ride on a school bus, going to overnight camp, getting a driver's license, going away to college. For adults, changing jobs or retiring, becoming a grandparent. And here's how you should think while you are planning this ceremony. Purpose, what are we marking? Place, where should the ritual take place? Community, who do we want present for this? Ritual and symbols, what should we do? And commitment, what promises are we going to make around this? For example, it's meaningful to include social action as part of your rite of passage. A ritual celebrating getting your driver's license might include delivering Meals on Wheels or something like that. And now the next activity that relates to another text, it's called The Time for Everything. It's a bit different from the text we just did about the stages of life. There are 2 introductions for younger kids and older kids. And again, there's links to more detailed information about Jewish writings to make answering questions easy. This is a text not about stages of life, but about the time we're living in today, and how the time we're living in today relates to the time of life when parents or grandparents were the same age as the children that they're doing this with. It's more about spirit than about ages. Let's consider this as we look at the text. This one is most of us, I think, will be excited to share with the younger ones. You might remember the Byrds sang it in the 60s. You can sing along, but keep muted or it won't play properly. And I'm going to bring it up. Again, all of these things are linked in the book.
Everything turn. There is a season, turn. And it's time to every first. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plan, a time to reap, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to lie, the time to live. To everything turn. There is a season, turn. and in time to every purpose under heaven. A time to build up, a time to break down, a time to dance, a time to mourn, a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And in time to every purpose under heaven. A time of love, a time of hate, a time of war, a time of peace. A time you made in place, a time to refrain from embracing. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And in time to every purpose under heaven. A time to gain, a time to lose, a time to rend, a time to sow, a time for love, a time for hate, a time for peace. I swear it's not too late.
So I wasn't going to say this before, but this reminded me. I was actually at Woodstock. My mother sent me to keep an eye on my sister. Um, and I really thought that was a transformational experience. I really thought that the world was going to be like that. And it's like this. And that's part of the reason we need to do this, grandparents and beyond, because there are things in there we need to let our children know. We need to try to do the best we can with what we've got here. So I'm going to continue sharing with you and show you some of the other interesting things to do. The activities that follow this text are really interesting. I'll start with the youngest kids. We have these cards that you can print out. It's called Pick a Passage card game. It's good for storytelling and good for playing cards. The last 4 pages of the booklet have cards that can be printed out, cut apart, used to play different games for players of various ages. I think I'm sharing wrong again. Hold on. I want to show you how they look. Okay, that's better. No, that's worse. I'm sorry. One more time. Okay. That's it. Okay. So they can be printed out, cut apart. Used to play games like Go Fish if you print them out twice, or Rummy. And there's also a template at the end so that you can put in whatever people you want to make the cards that you'd like to have as well. So our passages through different rites of passage are made more meaningful when we share them with community in a spiritual way. So instead of spades, clubs, diamonds, and hearts, these playing cards have passages, family, community, and ritual. And you can print out 2 sets, as I said, and play Go Fish, or you can just pick a card and tell a story. So think about a story you would share, and I'm going to show you how the cards look when you cut them out, and I'm going to share a story with you. I cut out a few cards. I'm going to pick one. Okay, this one is an aunt. This is actually my daughter, Becca, and she is an aunt to my other 2 daughters' kids. And I'm going to tell a story about my favorite aunt. Her name was Aunt Gloria. She was my father's sister. And the thing I loved about her was, if you remember the Matt Barr song we heard before, she remembered what it was like to be a kid. She had that honest and non-judgmental outlook. And she just, even though she had her own family, she was a responsible adult, she still knew how to see the world through the eyes of a kid. I always used to tell her she was my favorite aunt. She would always say, yeah, I'm your only aunt, which was true. But she was just wonderful. And I told myself that when I grew up, I would be like her. And I hope I have been. And that's also another reason why I love to do these activities and give people ideas of things they can do with their kids. And so another thing that's interesting, I'm going to share with you, also a nice activity to follow up this this text from Ecclesiastes, is to cook up some memories, do a family recipe together. And when you're thinking about a recipe you might share with your grandkids or your grandfriends, then maybe think of one that connects you to a family member or to a special dish from the country that your family might have come from, like my grandmother's Hungarian cherry soup, which she made from cherries that grew in her yard, which was really delicious. And if you're meeting virtually, you can do this side by side. That's very popular to do nowadays. There have been cooking parties this way and stuff. Or if you're together, of course, you can do it together. And then for younger children, there's a really interesting story. You might have heard of Honey. And I'm going to show it to you because it's really fun. Here. The story is called Honey's Surprise. And as you run your cursor over the story, some of the words turn into pictures. So I'm going to read it to you because it's fun. I'll tell you a story that my grandmother told me, but you have to make me a promise. What's the promise? Promise that you'll remember this story and tell it to your children when you grow up. It's a good story, even if you don't like the taste of carob. Long ago in Israel, a man named Honi was walking along a smooth and sunny road. The sky was bright and a gentle breeze cooled him as he walked. By and by, Honi saw an old man digging and digging at the side of the road. Why are you digging so furiously? Honi asked. That's hard work for an old man like you. I'm planting a carob tree, replied the old man. A carob tree? Honi replied in astonishment. Doesn't it take a carob tree 70 years to bear fruit? Well, yes, it does, said the old man. You must be 70 years old yourself, said Honi. You don't actually think you're ever going to taste the fruit of this tree, do you? Do you like carob? Asked the old man. I do. And I didn't plant the carob trees that grow the fruit that I eat. My parents did. Just as my parents planted for me, I will plant for my children. Ah, said Honi, I understand. And he walked a bit farther down the road. Soon Honi was tired and lay down in a flat place near some large rocks to take a nap. When he woke up, the place looked different. The sky was cloudy and the road was bumpy. But most different was the side of the road where the old man had been digging. The tree the old man had planted was fully grown and heavy with fruit. It's a miracle, said Honi to himself. Then he saw a man gathering the fruit from the tree. Are you the man who planted this tree? Asked Honi. No, I'm his grandson, the man replied. Honi realized that he had been asleep for 70 years. He walked down the road until he came into town. The buildings looked older, and none of the townspeople recognized him. Honi told the townspeople that he had been asleep for 70 years, but they didn't believe him. Still, they were kind to the wise old stranger. Honi lived many years more and traveled all over the land, planting carob trees everywhere he went. So that's a nice story that you can share with your youngster. And let's see what other activities we have. Hold on a second. That's not what I wanted to share. There. My email is not anywhere near as interesting as this book. And then there's one more thing that's included in this booklet, and that's a video of how to say the Jewish blessing over children. It tells the reason for the blessing and how and when to do it. The video starts out by saying, being a parent means loving your children more than anyone else in the world. And with a beginning like that, you know it's going to be a good video. So before we get to the Q&A, I want to tell you a little bit more about Chai Mitzvah real quickly and programs that might be interesting to you. Okay, Chai Mitzvah is a 501c3 mission-driven organization. Our mission is to partner with existing things like synagogues or JCCs and help them, their participants, to grow and to build community through conversations around Jewish texts and personal goals in areas of learning, ritual, spiritual growth, and social action. We have programs for adults and teens and families. Participants meet in small groups like a book group for meaningful conversations sparked by Jewish texts like we just did today, ancient and modern. There's no level of prior knowledge needed. Groups can span all the denominations. There are even multi-faith Chai Mitzvah groups. So there are two parts to being a Chai Mitzvah participant. Monthly group learning sessions like a book group using the Chai Mitzvah beautifully illustrated curriculum. And there are many topics to choose from. If you go to our website, you can see all the different topics. And opportunities for personal growth through learning and social action and spirituality. And if you want to know more about that, go to chaimitzvah.org. By now, of course, you know what Grandparents and Beyond is. It's meaningful activities around Jewish tradition and thought. And there are a series of 12 source books. So I'll show you what they are. Rites of Passage that we did today, Judaism and the Environment, Gratitude, adding insight and meaning to the Passover Seder, Israel and the Jewish Spirit, Individual and Community, Tzedakah, Philanthropy, Memory and Legacy, Ark of the Fall Holidays, Leadership, Interpersonal Relationships, and Mindfulness and Jewish Living. I also want to let you know about the Chai Mitzvah National Grandparents' Day Challenge. In recognition of National Grandparents' Day, Sunday, September 12th, we are offering our Grandparents and Beyond curriculum at no charge to the first 1,000 grandparents who signed up. And here's a little bit of information on how to do it. Each month you get a source book. There's no charge for the digital, but if you want printed source books, you can get them for $36. Each month, participants have the option of attending a Chai Mitzvah Grandparents Beyond session to review and answer questions, or you can look at the how-to webinars posted on the website if you feel you need them. Participants set a time and choose activities they want to do with their youngster. And in addition to grandparents and grandfriends inviting their own youngsters, the Grandparents Beyond curriculum is also being done right now in schools and youth groups with students inviting their grandparents and grandfriends. And if you would like to sign up, it's very easy. Register on the Chai Mitzvah website, chaimitzvah.org. There's no charge, and you'll receive a monthly source book in your email every month. And that is what I wanted to tell you about Chai Mitzvah. And I'd like to open the floor now to any questions or comments. If anyone wants to share a fun story, like some of the ones I shared, that's good to do too.
I have a very basic question. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you, yeah.
Yes, Carol.
It seems like a wonderful program, and it seems nicely developed. And it's always important to be able to find areas of commonality in discussing and finding ways to connect, especially since that statistic you had about 41% of that generation not really identifying as being Jewish. However, how do you approach this with your children who are not practicing or not practicing to the level that you wish they would, to allow you to introduce, which basically it's more than just communication. There's Jewish ethics and it's in Jewish learning. And do you get uh, pushback that is interfering with the parents' right to introduce that subject matter or not, as it turns out?
It's interesting. I think you're asking the age-old grandparenting question, like who's in charge and how do you get them to do the stuff that you'd like to see them do? And I think it really depends on your relationship. This is not like a really heavy duty. It's not like you're sitting there, preaching to them. It's fun stuff they can do with you. It just happens to be around a Jewish text or Jewish values. And I think it's going to depend on your kids. I think during COVID, my kids would have said, please engage my children. I don't care what you do. Just and it really depends, it really depends on how you engage them and how you introduce it to them and how they feel. The thing about it, it's so non-judgmental, and it's not saying that you need to have any level of knowledge. It's just really kind of fun stuff you can do. It does. One of the things that inspired us to do this was the Jewish Grandparents Network did a survey also, and they found that most Jewish grandparents wanted their children to do something Jewish, but they didn't know what to do, and none of them really did anything that they could point to as Jewish activity, except maybe celebrating a holiday together. But these are really fun activities. I can tell you I've done them with my grandchildren, and one of my daughters is married to a Jewish guy, one of them isn't. The kids are, they're kids, they're very young still, but I don't think either of them would object to this. I think that they would find it to be fun. So it kind of depends on you.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any other questions? Feel free to unmute yourself or write in the chat. Yes, Sharon. Mm-hmm.
I've joined the group already, and I've received 2 or 3 different information packets. And so my hope is that I'm going to start a grandparents group through the synagogue. I teach a class once a month for children, their parents, and their grandparents, 5 years and younger. So I've been doing that for the last couple of years, and we noticed that a lot of the grandparents do come to the Sunday morning class. So I think we'll probably wait till after the holidays, and I'm still trying to get together. I'll have to, sit with the rabbi and the cantor and see which is the best way to do it. I'm in Florida, and our numbers, unfortunately, are going up now with COVID. So even if we get together, I think we might also do a Zoom class too, because we're hoping that children who have grandparents on the other side of the country will include them. So I just keep coming to your meetings so I can get my head around it and see how it's going to happen. But it's wonderful information, so thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's so great to hear that. We right now have a group in Chicago of grandparents and a group in Connecticut where they meet. We have 3 schools in California that have their middle school kids bringing their grandparents by Zoom. Wow. And one of those groups is interesting because they're kids of Israeli parents. So their grandparents are in Israel. So it's a nice way for them to connect with their faraway grandparents.
Yes.
So it's very flexible, and I'm sure you're going to come up with something great. And like you said, a good combination. A lot of people are doing that combination now between virtual and in person. There's one school we work with in New Jersey, because New Jersey is just not fun to go out in the evening when it's February. They are going to have their middle semester virtual. because it's like a Hebrew high school, and their numbers fall if you're expected to show up on Monday night and it's already gotten dark at 4:30. You just, and it's 12 degrees outside. They have much better attendance if they do it by Zoom.
Okay,
So it's nice that we
Thank
have tools. Thank you. I'm excited to see how that goes.
me too.
Yes,
May I ask another one, please? I'm
Oh,
sorry.
there is another question
there's another
from
one.
Susan.
Okay, I'll
Go
wait.
ahead.
Okay. I think I saw Susan's hand
Yeah.
up.
Yes, I had a question. You said that one of your children's married Jewish and one did not. Okay. We have in our congregation and many mixed families. So how are you handling, or how would you suggest to handle those situations? For instance, if you have your talking about all the Jewish activities, but some of these children have had non-Jewish activities too, because of the non-Jewish parent. So would you include those things because they're important milestones and then discuss it?
I would. I taught when we were developing our family ed materials. I went back into a classroom because I just really wanted to see how families had changed. And I had a little girl in my class. It was fourth grade. She was a very, very smart girl, a great student. When we had deep discussions, she was very spiritual. And we were talking one day about where is a holy place. And some kids said the sanctuary, and some kids said a mountaintop, and some kids said a forest. And this little girl said a church, because I go there every other week. And I said, okay, because it's better to include than to exclude. And she was going to Hebrew school, and she had a bat mitzvah, but she also went to church. And I think that the world we live in is getting smaller and smaller. We have so many friends from different countries. We have just such a mixture of things nowadays. The synagogue I was teaching in was a non-denominational synagogue, but they kind of followed a lot of the conservative prayers. That's kind of what their prayer book was. And yet they had all kinds of mixtures. So I think it's important to be not closed-minded, but to what Judaism is really about, the spiritual part of Judaism, and talk about spirituality and what's right and what's wrong from a Jewish perspective, and accept that, yeah, this kid went to church also, and that was okay. So that's how I would see it. And as far as doing grandparents and beyond, definitely include them. You don't want to break up a family.
No, well, and you would also want to kind of clear it with the non-Jewish partner, even though they do Jewish things, but
right.
And
it's probably not the first time something has been brought up to them, I'm going to imagine.
of course.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, we only have a few more minutes. I'm going to conclude the session, but if anybody would like to stay and ask more questions, Nina, that would be great if you can stay with us.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Nina, for being here today. I wanted to invite everybody back on here next Thursday at the same link and the same time. We'll be hosting Berman House for one last virtual Food for Thought program before going back in person on August 5th. So thank you everybody for joining us today, and we'll stay for a few more minutes for